I'm Ryan O'Dowd. You're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today we're continuing with Section 514, Coup D'Etat by Edward Luttwak. We're in Chapter 4, The Planning of the Coup D'Etat. Neutralizing the political forces, 2. Particular groups. Which organized groups will be sufficiently strong to oppose us, even if the voice of the government is silent and the capital city visibly in our hands? Not many, but we must remember that even one well-organized demonstration or a well-timed strike could pose a serious threat to the coup in the delicate transitional phase. It's therefore essential to identify such groups, and once identified, to neutralize them before the coup. Once it is known that a coup has taken place, the leaders of the militant organizations concerned will immediately prepare for action. They themselves will then be more difficult to arrest, and their organizations will be halfway underground. In countries where political conflict is limited to the verbal dimension, this kind of dramatic and rapid response to political change will be unknown. But elsewhere, where political conflicts can be violent and where all organized forces, whether primarily political or not, can be drawn into them, this type of response is more or less automatic. Political parties in the Middle East and South America, trade union movements in Southern Europe, religious movements in South Vietnam have little in common except A, their ability to respond in this way, and B, that even without the weaponry that some of them have, they could be a real threat to the coup. We will conduct our analysis in terms of those three types of political force, because their features will largely subsume those of other kinds of organized groups, which may be relevant in particular countries. In the United States or Britain, for example, where neither trade unions nor religious groups nor political parties are sufficiently militant to oppose a coup after it has seized its initial targets. The groups which may have this capability, such as paramilitary movements of the paranoid right, will be organized in a manner which includes features of all three. One of the points which we must bear in mind is that not all the organized groups which are important in normal political life will also be important in the highly restricted and spasmodic politics of the coup. Conversely, groups which in ordinary political life are of very limited importance could emerge as real threats. If, for example, we fail to neutralize the organization of, say, the National Rifle Association in the USA or the National Union of Students in the UK, their reaction, however ineffectual per se, could still endanger the coup by slowing down the process of political stabilization, inasmuch as they could provoke conflicts which would reopen the whole issue. Other more prudent groups would then re-examine the possibility of challenging our position, while the use of violence to stop the agitation of the groups we have overlooked could lead to further opposition, since the side effects of violence would increase the awareness of and hostility to the coup. Finally, there are certain political forces which must not be neutralized, apart from those groups which have agreed to support us. These are those groups which are generally regarded as extremists, but whose effective powers are limited. By allowing them a certain freedom of action, we will give them an opportunity to oppose us, and their opposition will have two favorable byproducts. A, we will be able to gain the support of those political forces which fear them more than us, and B, we will be able to step forward and fight other groups after having associated them with the extremists in question. This can, however, be a dangerous game to play. In the confused and dramatic situation of the coup, the extremists could gain in power and political support, and it is therefore possible from that time, which we have allowed them, to discredit the opposition, and it will work in their favor. Religious organizations. In many economically developed countries, religious organizations no longer have much political power, though they may still be an important social force. The leaders of religious groups can be influential in social and, to a degree, political life, but the allegiance of the believers is rarely expressed by direct and forceful action in the political field. In economically backward countries, and in those whose development is limited or very recent, it's otherwise. Where the newer technology of man has only been recently applied or not at all, the older technology of God is still of paramount importance. This can be a source of very considerable political power to the organizations which are identified with the appropriate beliefs, which are able to channel the sentiments of the believers. Leaving aside local cults, which are too fragmented to be important in terms of national politics, and which in any case tend to be apolitical, we see that even universal religions will differ in their degree of political involvement. The role of the Catholic Church in Italy since the war illustrates the power which can be accumulated by a well-organized religious group, even when operating in circumstances which are unfavorable from the religious point of view. Though most male Italians seldom or never go to church, Italian women are keen and regular churchgoers. Italy being a democratic country where women have the vote, it's obvious that if the organized church is willing to direct its followers to vote for a particular party, that party will gain the bulk of the women's vote before it even opens its electoral campaigns. The church has generally been willing to give such specific directions, and one particular party has benefited, the Democrazia Cristiana. Aided by its assured majority of the female vote, the DC has ruled Italy alone or in coalitions since 1946, and it has done so largely because of the support received from the church. It is hardly surprising, therefore, that the church has been able to dominate the DC, and that through the DC, it has influenced every aspect of Italian national life. This is no vague influence exercised on a plane of generalized authority, but rather a constant supervision of political activity, conducted at the provincial level by the bishops and at the national level by the Pope and his associates. At each level of the state bureaucracy, the church, directly or indirectly, exercises its influence on civil service jobs and promotions, on the allocation of investment funds and of the various kinds of government grants, on administrative decisions dealing with zoning and building regulations. This influence has brought its rewards. While the facilities of the state bureaucracy have steadily deteriorated compared with the dynamic private and semi-state sector, the church's educational and religious facilities have steadily expanded. Money to build and the permissions required to do so have never been lacking. If we failed to neutralize the organization of the church in Italy, it could inspire and coordinate opposition to us through its capillary network of parish churches. Parishioners are used to hear political messages from the pulpit. Priests are used to receive detailed political briefs from their bishop, and the latter receive their instructions from the Vatican. Our neutralization of the telecommunications facilities will not prevent the flow of instructions. The Vatican maintains its own radio station, and this could be used to contact directly the organization throughout the country. The Catholic Church plays a similar role in certain other countries, where it has a 99.9% nominal membership and the status of the national religion. But the stronger state structure of Spain and Portugal, let alone France, has denied it the preeminent position it has in Italy. The intervention of the Church would, however, be a powerful factor in much of the Catholic world, including South America, especially if the motive force behind the coup was identified as being anti-clerical. Islam, which has the comprehensive nature of a religion, a political system, and a civilization, is still, though much decayed, a major political force, and its leaders play a recognized political role. The doctors of El-Azhar University in Cairo, one of the main theological institutions of the Muslim world, are periodically prompted by the Nasser regime into openly political declarations. No single leader in Islam has the authority of a pope because the system is less centralized. But in each country, the local leaders are still very important. Even the spread of Arab socialism has not impaired the position of Islam, and governments which follow an extreme left line in all foreign and some domestic matters are still unwilling to challenge the status of Islam as the state religion. When such a course was tentatively suggested by an obscure member of the present Syrian government, the leadership, which follows an almost Peking line in all other fields, was forced to denounce him officially. Whether this resilience means that the Islamic leadership of particular countries could act as an active political force is another matter. The structures of Islam as an organized religion are fossilized. The fluid and dynamic aspect of the movement in its early days has been replaced by a dogmatic and extremely conservative set of beliefs, whose inflexibility is one of the causes of the present travail of the Arab world. The political sterility of Islam in recent times has meant that, though it has been used by governments to propagate their political initiatives, Islam per se has only acted when a direct attack has been made on religious orthodoxy. Consequently, unless our coup has a definite anti-Islamic coloring, religious leaders in Muslim countries will not initiate any action against us. We must therefore prevent our opponents imposing such a coloring on our coup. In the intermittent political warfare between Arab socialists and the monarchies, while the latter are accused of being tools of the Zionist imperialist oil monopolies, the former are accused of wanting to eradicate Islam with their godless beliefs. Actually, even the soi-disant progressives would not dream of challenging Islam, which is after all the main factor, through the language of the Quran, which binds the Arab countries, separated as they are by both history and geography. Thus, with the one qualification made above, we can ignore Islam as an active political force. The same goes for Hinduism, which, though otherwise very different, shares the passive political role of Islam. Though some political forces in India have successfully made use of Hindu sentiments, religious leaders as such have never actually initiated any major political action. Even the periodic agitation against cow slaughter is instigated by the extreme right parties. An extreme example of the potentialities of a dynamic religious leadership is the mainline Buddhist movement in South Vietnam. The almost continual warfare of the last generation and the politically destructive effects of the Diem regime have led to a collapse of the social and political structures of the country, while its economy has been reduced to local subsistence agriculture allied with urban dependence on U.S. aid. In this situation, the newer economic, political, and social forces have become extremely weak, and the groups based on the older religious affiliations have emerged as the only valid civilian force in Vietnam society. Apart from the mainline Buddhist movement led by Thich Tri Huang and other regional leaders, there is the following alignment of forces as of early 1968. Hua Hao, a reformed Buddhist group with a large following in the southern Delta part of the country. Their leadership is politically oriented and, except for strictly local alliances, is anti-Viet Cong. They appear to have built up the rudiments of an armed militia. Cao Dai, an important Buddhist sect which has a history of political participation. Bin Zuyen, a small but very active part sect and part secret society. Its main area of strength is in the Saigon region, and before the Diem regime displaced them, the Bin Zuyen used to own the city's police force and its underworld. This sect has been influenced by the Chinese secret societies from across the river in Kolan, and the effective repression at the hands of Diem has been to drive it underground rather than to destroy it. Catholics. Until Diem's fall, the large Catholic minority was able to dominate the Buddhist majority. Many of the South Vietnamese community are refugees from the north. Under France, many Catholics cooperated actively with the colonial power and served in the French armed forces. Now that the South appears to be going the way of the North when, in 1954, the community has reached a desperate impasse. Their activity against a pro-Viet Cong or pro-peace coup would be immediate and probably very effective. All these religious groups could intervene against a coup. Their meeting places could be used to assemble and shelter our opponents. The priesthood could inspire and coordinate mass agitation against us. Finally, their direct influence on the army and the bureaucratic rank and file could be used to resist the imposition of our authority. The religious groups which can be important in particular countries will differ doctrinally, but will be organizationally sufficiently similar to adopt a general method of neutralization. If they operate private broadcasting facilities, such as the Vatican Radio or the small radio stations of American missionary sects in many parts of the world, we will put them temporarily out of action. Religious meeting places should not be closed by administrative methods, which are liable to foment rather than stifle opposition, but access to them should be barred by incidental roadblocks. The leadership of religious organizations presents a special problem in terms of neutralization. Because of their particular psychological role in the minds of public opinion, it will usually be extremely unwise to arrest the actual hierarchic leadership. Fortunately, the actual decision-makers within religious organizations will often be younger men who are not in the public eye but who are key figures from our point of view. If the real decision-makers are not also the hierarchical leaders, we will arrest them. But if the two roles are embodied in the same person or persons, we will not do so. In concrete terms, a Thich Tri Huang, who is an effective decision-maker, but not formally in higher leadership, can and should be arrested. But a pope, who is both the representational and effective leader, cannot, however, be arrested without stimulating a great deal of opposition, the impact of which will outweigh any advantage to be gained from the arrest. Thus concludes Section 5:14 of Coup D'Etat by Edward Luttwak. Tomorrow we will finish section with 5:15, Chapter 4, The Planning of the Coup D'Etat. I will see you then. Alam.